you to the convener of this boot camp. Thank you for counting me worthy to be part of the facilitators. I want to appreciate you and I want you to know that I do not take it for granted in any way. Equally, I'd like to appreciate everyone who had been supporting her to ensure that this vision comes to limelight. Thank you for giving so much support, all the volunteers and every member of staff who had provided the necessary shoulder from which she lays on. So I want to appreciate you. Thank you very much. And more importantly, I'd like to appreciate everyone who is joining now and who subsequently may be joining. I want you to understand that this is not just about the facilitators alone. The facilitators would not have much to do if you were not on site, online rather. This is a virtual event, so for you to have make-up time to be able to make it to an event like this, it's a sacrifice of time, it's a sacrifice of your resources, probably in the place of data and some other things that you may have put together to make this a success. However, I would like to also clarify to you that it's never in vain. The time you are investing, the time you are putting into this would give value. I want you to understand that as much as you had tried your best to be able to say you would be part of this, you'll get quality value for it that will translate into something that in a short while from now, you would look back and be grateful that you attended a virtual boot camp. So on that note, I had only said that as a canvas to print whatever I would be drawing this afternoon. I'd been given the opportunity to speak. So the first session will be on a 20-minute conversation. I'd like to call it a conversation because I do not want it to be a monologue. As much as I see many things, I'd like for us to also provide responses. And if you have any question, I can deal with it. Can deal with you just dropping it in the chat box and then I relating with it instead of waiting till the end of the presentation. So I would be starting now with how to read, understand difficult subjects and top the class. When I saw this topic, I was like, wow, this is interesting. So we want to read, we want to understand what we are reading, we want to understand seemingly difficult subjects, and we also want to stay at the top of our class. As I'd always try to paint it and to emphasize over and again, you would not meet anyone who you would ask, do you want to be a failure? And the person would answer in the affirmative that yes, I want to be a failure. You would never see anyone like that. So that is to paint to us that everyone wants to be a success. Everyone wants to record excellence in whatever they do. And I like to start on that by telling you that you may not have been recording academic excellence now, or you may be struggling with your academics now. That's not enough for you to give up. That's not enough for you to throw in the towel and then say, I'm not going to put in my best again. No. Sometimes you could also get people around who are not doing as much as you are and they are getting more results. That's not to compare yourself with them. That's not to say that probably you are dumb. And may I make bold to also tell you that peradventure someone had told you that you are dumb. Peradventure someone had said you never amount to anything. Peradventure you had tried over and again and you had failed face down all the time you had tried. I also like to remind you, if you had known before and if you do not know, I'd like to state very expressly that that's not the end. You can always rise again. You can always put in more effort. You can always do more. So how do you read? That's the first thing. I like to always draw the thin line between reading and studying. One of the challenges we have as students is that sometimes we misconstrue the term reading with studying. You do not read sometimes, you study. One leads to the other, but they are not connected in some ways. and more importantly, in some very explicit ways, they are connected. Now let's go to that. When you read, you may not be studying. You may just be doing glancing through. You may just be skimming around. But when you study, reading is a part of studying. Reading is something you do that is part of the things you do as a process of studying. So why do you want to read? If you want to understand the class, then you understand or agree with me that you'd have to take a step. Please, reading. You have to take a step beyond the place of, this part of very vividly. While I was young, I was in the basic education, and I'd always come very excellently. My parents, and all of a sudden, I attended a different school for my high school, and my first result was the 10th position, and I was aghast. How come? I was crying, shedding tears, and then a colleague of mine walked up to me and said, "What's wrong with you? Why would you have such a result, and you would be surprised?" I had 14th, you had 10th, and I'm proud of my 14th because we are 47 students in this class, and I've left a number of others behind. And he never understood the reality of what I was going through. The reason is because I knew my potentials, I knew what I could do, I knew he was satisfied with what he had. I knew that was not my best. And, one of the things I learned from that story is that sometimes you may be doing very well now, and then you think you are doing very well, measuring yourself with the wrong yardstick. You may be doing well among seemingly unproductive people who do not challenge you to do better. And so I would like to emphasize to you today that how do you measure success? Excellence in the first place. How do you get to understand that, yeah, I'm doing well, no, I'm not doing well, I need to improve, I need to do this? How do you get this right? And that's the line I want to present across. Now you have to understand first that success is not just about you saying, yes, I was first in class. First in class may not be the first among some other people. So I'd like to first paint to you that when you say you want to come top in class is not necessarily top in your own class. And I like to always use stories to paint these things to you, because I remember while I was in secondary school, so precisely SS1, I had my colleagues in most of my friends in the sciences, and I was in the arts department. Very competitive, and they're doing very well. I had issues with mathematics, and I was like, okay, I'll leave mathematics for you guys. You guys are science students. I'll concentrate on my literature, on my history, and other subjects in this arts. And by the time it's cumulated, those subjects will give me a better leverage compared to you guys. And the truth is this: when the results came out here, we were competing. I was down, and I was going down the drill with mathematics. So sometimes also we tend to measure competition. We tend to look at it from a different perspective. So I want to emphasize to you today that when you say you want to come top in your class, what's the motive behind it? If you say you want to come as the leading student in your class, what is the rationale behind that? Please do not drive, do not push yourself. And if you have parents on the call, I'd like to also tell you that you do not need to belabor your kids or children with the emphasis that yes, you must be the first at the expense of other important things. All right. When the child is doing his best, it's important. So with that being said, I'll go straight to the key points I wanted to mention. What are the important things that helps us to be able to say, yes, we want to do well in class, we want to lead? So let's go. We want want to do it with your heart painted. Second is that I'd also said that at the introduction, it's very important. Everybody, every rational being wants to succeed. So how do we get it done? We've spoken about the why, so let's go to the how. How do we get it done? One of the things is that we have to first understand that how is the performance in my class, how is it measured? In some schools, it's measured based on a accumulation of the what's it called, and the examination. So the two are brought together, and eventually you get the score. That's the way it's measured in some places. In some places, it's not measured that way. So you have to understand which category do you belong to. You also have to understand that what's the subject I'm having issues with, or what's the subject I want to do well at. If you're trying to do well in a particular subject like mathematics, then you understand that, okay, how is mathematics? How do we get evaluated in mathematics? Is it just the first CA test, second CA test, and then we go to the examination? If it's were to be home economics, that's a different one because you will be doing practicals. Are we together, please? So, it depends on the different subjects, right? The different courses that are available and the requirement for you to get through it. So how do you study in a way that will make you to become an excellent student? That's the way I would like to paint it. The first is this. Let's assume you want to study subjects that include process. I call them process subjects because you just have to read, understand, which is a part of studying, and then you are good to go. So let me give you a practical example. If you have to take a course on one of the subjects in secondary school, probably one of my favorite subjects in history, is to take a subject on history, and you have to do, do we have anyone who is studying history here, who is an high school student who takes history? So I do not just give an example that is of the blue moon. I don't want to give an example.
I think we should use English. English is general.
Oh, great. Thank you. So I wanted to be sensitive with that. So for English, let's assume we want to study a concept in English. Let's use what class comes to my mind now. Let's use SS2. Let's use SS2, and we want to try to understand the English. Let me pick that up. English curriculum for SS2. Okay, I have SS1 here.
We have stress, emphatic stress. Then we have comprehension and essay.
Okay, that's sorry, can you mute? I'm hearing myself again. Good, thank you. So I just looked up some here and I saw a few. And just like you had said, thank you very much regarding stress and all of that. You understand that for English is one of the most interesting subjects that, I keep emphasizing you should be able to pass when you're in secondary school, not because I teach English while I was in school to some of my kids, but the point is this. In English, it's predictable. You understand that when it comes to the assessments, you would have to do comprehension. You have to write essay. You would have to write summary. You would have to answer questions relating to lexical structure, emphatic stress, some other areas also. So you know those things. The only thing is which of the questions will be coming up. And in that way, how do you prepare for English? You just have to understand that what are the key points. And that was what I emphasized. I said, understand the subject area, the thematic subjects. This is English. This is the way the question comes out in English, and this is the way I want to approach it. Now, I wanted to emphasize at the beginning that this presentation is not about study skills. No, please do not misconstrue it as study skills. I wanted to paint show a video that I remember was shown while I was taking my OG training course, and that video is actually on how our brain gets to read, on how we get to understand concepts by the time we read concepts. Excuse me for that. When you read concepts, how do you get to understand those concepts? How does our brain connect with the reading process? And that was the video I wanted to show us, but as a second thought, since it was not a presentation on reading, I gave it
Please, you can show us. You can share your screen and show us, sir. Or you can send the video later to our group, the bootcamp group.
Oh, okay, that works. I would like to share the video. I'll share the video with you. So if you're on the group, please, I appreciate you just to look up the video later. When we read, our brain works in neural pathways. Neural pathways. Let me drop it in the chat. Oh, where's that? Okay, I think call messages. Neural pathways. Now, anytime we hear anything neuro, we understand that is actually the brain. So our brain, there's a way our brain works. It's wired to work in a way that it's like neurons. It's like a lot of things, axons, dendrites that connect with each other. So we don't just read anyway. I like to always give this simple example. So I would ask just 3 people. When I mention your name, you please provide a response. I can see Kike had been unmuting a couple of times. So I'll ask you, Kike, while you were coming, or just today, I don't know if you've been outdoor, but in the last, today's Tuesday, between Sunday and now, right? How many red cars have you seen, Kike? Kike, are you there? Okay, I can't hear anything from Kike. So let me ask Jubilee. Jubilee, can you hear me? Wow.
Please, we can unmute Kike, Jubilee. You can unmute to answer or respond to the speaker.
Okay, Jubilee is saying something. So, Jubilee, sorry, how many red cards have you seen from Sunday till now? Can you remember?
I didn't take notes.
You did not take notes? Oh, I love that answer. So, Abdul Hamid, are you there? Abdul Hamid, Abiola, good.
I'm with you.
Can you remember the number of red cards you've seen from between Sunday and now? Oh, I'm afraid I can't hear you. I can see you're unmuted, but I can't.
How many?
2.
He said 2.
2. You are so sure?
Yes.
All right. So can you remember the brand of the cars?
No, not really.
Okay, so we cannot agree that you saw 2 then. So, because of time, I would like to just stop with that example while I explain the reality behind that. There's a part of our brain that is called the reticular activating system. Don't mind the big grammar. What that does is the part of our brain that stimulates our sensory to be able to recall whatever we had read. Now, while I was asking you, some of us may not have seen a red car between Sunday and now. Some of us may have seen more than 5. Some of us may have seen 2 and all of that. Those are possibilities. But if I were to give you an example now and I said, Jubilee, Kike, Abdulhamid, when you're going home today, between now and weekend, or between now and the end of the boot camp, please count the number of red cars you see. What happens to you? Even if you forgot the assignments, as you walk down the road, as you see the television, and as you do your daily activity, immediately you see a red car, what comes up to your mind? You remember the assignment. Now, wow, I was given an assignment on red car. Wow, this is a red car. And then it comes to your mind. That is what we call the RAS. And we have to ensure that our brain works in that direction. The brain is able to recall things. When I train teachers and parents, I keep asking the question. Many times we say that, how many of you have seen a movie? If I say Money Heist, how many of you have seen it? If I mention another popular movie, many of us could recall vividly some of the things we've seen. And that will take me to the next thing. After RAS, I'd like to talk to you about the VAKT model. The VAKT model is called V is for visual, A is for auditory, K is for kinesthetic, T is for tactile. Don't bother about all of those big English. I do not mean to make it ambiguous. I just needed to explain something to you. When we say visual, you have to ensure that your learning is visual. You must be able to see what you are learning. Some people are visual learners. Whatever they see, they don't forget. Whenever they can just recall paint a picture. Yes, I remember Mr. Samson was teaching us chemistry, and he was teaching us polymerization. He was standing towards that direction, and this was the way he wrote the formula. This was the way he wrote those things, and they can picture it in the exam and write the same thing. Those are visual learners. When you are saying it and you're not showing them, they don't get it. When you are telling them that this is the way, and that's why many of them don't do well in science, is visual learners. Because when you tell them this is the way an electron moves, they do not see electrons, so they don't even understand how the electron moves. The same goes to the second category of learners, auditory learners. These guys are very good when they hear. So those ones, lecture method works for them. When you teach them and you help them, whenever they hear, their brain works more with what they hear. The next is kinesthetic. I can see the time is ticking, so I'm trying to be fast. The next is kinesthetic. We have V, visual, A, auditory, K is kinesthetic. When we talk about the kinesthetic learners, these are people that learn using activity. If you have taught them anything and they have not practiced it, they've not learned. If you are teaching them and you don't engage them in the process, they don't learn. And the last is tactile. The process of using the hands also similar to kinesthetic. Now, what do we emphasize? We emphasize that I'd like you to check this thing out. It's called the pyramid of learning. So please go look it up at your convenience. Okay, I could drop it on the group chat some other time too. I always like the pyramid of learning when I'm explaining any concept related to learning, because it had changed my learning process. This method I taught you is not the best way of learning. Just you reading, listening to me, and you are not even seeing me, you are not seeing any visuals. It's not the best. The best way to learn is multimedia. You must be seeing what you are learning, you must be hearing it, and you must be involved. And so, when we find ourselves in a country like Nigeria, and where some other things do not necessarily work in our favor, what do we do in that context? We do this by reinventing ourselves, by making it work out for ourselves. So let's go to what I wrote here. Number one, you scan the headings and the subheadings. See, I need to let you understand that this part of learning, it helps you to understand better. Understanding, studying better instead of studying harder. Many times you tell you read, work harder, study harder. No. When you understand the way you study, please don't just jump into, probably you want to learn something about a concept that has title and then has subtitles. Don't just read chronologically that way. First look at the title, the heading rather, look at the subheading, look at the illustration, just skim through it. That's what some people call the SQ3R, but this is not SQ3R in this context. Look through what you want to read before you start reading it. That's where your brain is prepared for what you want to read. The second is focus your attention on the chunks of information. Now, I've seen many students do that a lot, and it works so much for them, especially at the tertiary institution. They create their own notes. Whatever they've learned, whatever they have read, they try to write it out. And that's amazing. That's powerful. Because what you are doing is you are making neural patterns in your brain, and you are connecting them with existing patterns. For example, you are learning a new concept. You are also trying to connect it with a concept that you have learned before. These things are very, very important. Connecting the previous with the existing, the new. And that's why this teaching, when they say you teach from simple to complex, that is also when you are learning, also you also go from simple, you move to complex. The next is especially when you are learning a concept that requires reading, like what I called the other time, prose related concepts. You have to ensure that you pause sometimes. You recall. If you're a learner like myself, I'm not a good learner when it comes to sitting in a place and then learning at a stretch. What I do most times is I learn in bits. So when I've done this, I distract myself a bit, and then I move to something else, and then I come back again. Do you understand what's happening with that? I found out that what you are doing in that space is that type of studying skills, it helps you to edge your neural patterns and connect it deeply with your brain. That is, the process just becomes as physical as mental. The way our brain works, the way our brain is connecting those concepts is the same way too we must be able to bring them in. Please don't make things complicated. I like to emphasize, when you are reading and you are feeling headache, leave what you are doing. Sometimes you just need to walk around. Sometimes you just need to. Another example is to make it look practical. You are reading or you are studying a particular concept that does not even look as if it's related to what you know at all. Picture it and bring it to what you know. Connect it to something that you can, the least thing you can remember, and bring it back to it. Now, the next is space out your studies and your homework, please and please. Our brain is like a muscle. Some people call it the spongy tissue. That is, does not work just like one stretch. You know, how many of us a sponge, or probably when you want to take your bath, that sponge we use, the traditional sponge, you discover that when you dip it into the water, it absorbs water. And then the more water it absorbs, when you try to stretch it, you discover that even when you stretch it, there is still water, the water contents in it. That's the way our brain works too. And sometimes also it has been described as an elastic organ of the brain, of the body. That is, the more you use it, the more it spaces out, the more it stretches out. So what we are saying is this: don't combine everything at a stretch. Try as much as possible to be flexible. Learn this one, move to the next one. And finally, not everybody can walk in a disjointed way. Some of us, our brain has been programmed in a chronological order. If you are studying mathematics now, please don't leave it and then go and pick English. No. Ensure that there's an habit, and that's what I emphasize over and again. See, you cannot, over time, our emphasis is understanding difficult subjects. Because you want to understand a difficult subject, let me paint the scenario to you. Can anybody in the call, that will be the last question for now, before we move to the second part of the presentation. Can anybody in the call describe to me how you can eat an elephant? Let's assume today you caught an elephant. Recently an elephant was seen in a part in Oyo State, in a part of Oyo State, and then let's assume you caught an elephant like that. How would you eat it? If you want to kill the elephant and then make it into a meal, can anybody help us? How would you get that done? Anyone? Do I need to call in name before you volunteer? Okay, Stephanie. Since you answer a name very close to mine, I see you, Stephen. But let me call Stephanie. Stephanie, can you please help us? Wow. Okay, Stephen, are you there? Awesome. Sorry, Mrs. Precious, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So I just wanted to be sure I'm not the only one. Good. Okay. So let me just. Can you please mute your mic? It's echoing. Good. The point I'm trying to explain with that concept is this: there is no way you can hit an elephant at a stretch. Just take it and then you put it in your mouth. It's not possible. The saying that says, how do you eat an elephant? What do? You eat it in bits. You break it into chunks, and then that's the way you eat it. That's the same way it works too. Whenever you cannot say, because this subject you don't understand it today I will finish it. No. When you're preparing for exam, you don't come at the deadline and you think you can just understand everything overnight. No. You prepare gradually. Every time. I remember while I was in my first degree, I read the content of the coursework for the new semester. I read it before that semester. So I had finished the semester before my colleagues resumed. And in that way, in the class, it's like a revision for me. So when it comes to preparing for examination, it is seamless. So I don't know if there is any question from that before I go to the next part that says learning as a special needs child, why you don't need to stop. Do we have any question regarding the first part? Or I always like specific examples. Probably you are struggling with an area that works well for me. If there is any specific example of any subject you are struggling with or any area you are struggling with that you want me to share, my recommendation. Thank you. So I'd wait a bit to get that.
Wow. Any question, please let it come in. any area you're having difficulty in studying, any subject you're having an issue. We just have 1 minute to do that so that he can quickly answer and move on.
Good afternoon. I have a question.
Okay, please do, Jubilee.
If, like, in a subject like math, if you have a problem and try it over and over, does it mean that we should just keep trying, or we should give up?
Okay, is that all? I got your question, Jubilee. Thank you very much for that question. Do we have any other questions so we do not have to get questions from questions? I was thinking we could just merge all the questions and then I answer everything at once. Any other person? Okay, so while we await other questions, you can please drop it in the chat box. Now, Jubilee, I like to paint this picture to you. If you are trying to open a door, you were coming from school and you were knocking the door, and all of a sudden you discover that probably your mom is sleeping or someone is indoor, and you are trying to knock the door and you have been unable to access the building because you do not have the key and it needs to be opened from the other end. What do you do, Jubilee?
I keep working at.
Okay, now let me make it more complex. Let's assume you were coming from school and you were pressed. You feel like using the toilet and you were rushing down, and then you go to the door. What do? Do you just knock the door and say, "Oh, nobody's at home," and then you sit down? Is that what you do?
No.
What do you do?
No.
Please share with us.
You keep knocking until somebody answers the door.
Good, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm impressed with your answer. I love that word. You keep knocking until someone answers from the other end. In our own case, we keep trying, but we do not. As we go to the second part, I think that would be a very good part for me to go to the next part. As a special educator, I found out that we do not just keep trying. We don't just say, if you're not getting it, just keep trying. No, we don't do that. Okay, you just keep trying, just keep trying. In some cases, we try to diagnose, we try to assess why are you not getting it. So let's assume I'm struggling with mathematics. Why am I struggling with mathematics? Let's assess ourselves. So we have to understand why I'm struggling with mathematics before I can understand if I should keep trying. Because no matter how much you force some things, if it's not there, it does not produce. For example, I like to always give this practical example of a vehicle, a motor car that is going. If a motor car had an accident, what would you expect to come outside of the motor car? Like the contents, if you see any liquid contents coming out, what will it be? The only thing you will get to see from it is probably petrol or blood. Is that correct? So, but if probably a plantain tree falls, and then it falls on another thing, probably a mango tree, and then you start seeing blood coming out, doesn't that look so strange? It does, because you do not expect that blood should come out because there is no blood in the contents of that tree. That's the same way it is. A person who has been struggling with a particular thing, you don't just keep trying. You don't keep punching the mango tree expecting that blood will come out. It's not there. So what do we do in that case, Jubilee? We try to understand why you were struggling. Now, that's similar to something. So I'll go straight to my next presentation, and I hope I'll be able to answer it from that presentation. So the next presentation, very quickly, is on learning disabilities. So why do we struggle? There are so many reasons. I want to try to open from my part the original topic I was given, so I can speak to it directly. It says learning as a special needs child, you cannot stop. That is, you need to keep yourself motivated. It's not that you cannot stop, that is, you just keep trying. No, that's not what we advocate for. So now, let's assume you are a special needs child. Special needs is a generic word, that is a general word for many areas such as autism, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, and all of that. I'd not like to go into all of those now. Let's just stay with the ones that are with us that we don't even know are existing in some cases. So that is sometimes called specific learning disability, SPLD. So when we talk about specific learning disabilities, that is, these are disabilities that are not seen with our eyes. When you see someone who has Down syndrome, you know this person has Down syndrome. When you see someone who is autistic, by the time you are trying to communicate with the person, you may guess that this person is on a spectrum. But when you see someone who is dyslexic, you may not know. When you see someone who has ADHD, you may not even know. When you see someone who has dysgraphia, until the person starts writing, you may not know. When you see someone who has dyscalculia, similar to your question, Jubilee, which deals with calculation, you may not know. So I'll give you just 5 this afternoon. So probably you are writing, want you to do that now. So we have 1, dyslexia. We have 2, ADHD. Dyslexia is spelled Dyslexia. Number 2 is ADHD. Okay, I think it would be nice if I drop it in the chat box. The first one is dyslexia. The next one is ADHD. The next after that is dyscalculia. Sorry, can you see it in the chat box? Let me know, please.
Yes, we can see it.
Oh, thank you. The next one is dysgraphia. And let me just drop one more. Let me stop at dyspraxia. So when we talk about this, I want to be very fast with it because I know there will be questions so that we don't eat into other schedules. Dyslexia is primarily the number 1 when it comes to learning disabilities, and it affects about 15% of the students in our class. That is 1 in 5 children, 1 in 5 learners in the classroom has dyslexia. So what do we mean by that? It implies that these children, these individuals, they have a condition that affects their understanding of text or speech. That is, people who have dyslexia, they may struggle with reading comprehension. When they read, they may find it difficult to understand. If they are babies, some of them, they don't talk on time. Some of them have issues with another difficulty that is called APD, which is auditory processing disorder. That is when you say something to them, most times it's a different thing. For example, I like to use the word cat. If I say cat, everybody say, oh, okay, let me just pick one of us here. Biosus. Sorry if I murdered the name, but I think that's what it may be to me. Sorry, please. So, the name I just called now. So, okay, should I just say divine? Divine, please. Say cat, divine. Divine. Okay. Omotayo, can you hear me? Suliat. Wow. Okay. All right. So let me just
try and participate so that we can all be on a safe ground.
Okay, let me just assume you can all hear. I wanted to use someone as an example. The point is this: dyslexic, it's a different thing they hear. Not as if when they say talk by the hear bimbo. No, that's not what it's saying. It's saying that for their oral, their auditory processing, that is, they may not be able to pick all the sounds in a particular word. I have some children I'm working with currently, and then when I say some things, I will have to say it over and again before they can really get the normal sound from it. Some of them, while they were young, they used to have reversals. If you have seen a child, those of us who are teachers, when you say a child who writes B as D, that's it. Some of them have issues with long-term memory, short-term memory rather. When you tell them something they forgot, and that's why parents keep saying, yes, she does not know how to remember, she does not remember anything. The only thing she understands is food. Many times too, he has forgotten. I think I asked him to go and buy something from me from the next shop. Before he got back, he has forgotten what I sent him. These are symptoms of dyslexia. They have issues with distinguishing between left and right. I still have people like that. They don't know the difference between their left hand and their right hand. Some of them have issues with distinguishing, understanding the analog clock. When they see 4 o'clock, they cannot interpret it. In fact, I have a 24-year-old friend of mine who still has that issue, and she's a graduate now. She's currently 7. So these are peculiar issues relating to dyslexia. Now, ADHD are people, over 6 million children are diagnosed with ADHD. For ADHD, it's easy to diagnose because most of the time they get to understand it in the hospital and then they diagnose on time. So you need a medical doctor, preferably a psychiatrist, to treat this. Not treating, rather, it's a lifelong issue. So, but to be able to identify this in good time. People like this, they don't sit down on time. Like you can see them in your class. Just when everybody is sitting down, you see this one jumping up, playing around. They are not organized. Many times they forget things so easily too. They find it difficult to stay quiet and to pay attention. When the teacher is saying something, before the teacher says, who has any question, even though they don't have question, they are up. They want to say something, even when they don't have anything to say. An answer to a question, they are always the one raising their hand, and they may end up saying nonsense. So these are issues. So many of them have issues with motivation. They lack motivation. Go and do these things, I cannot do it, and all of that. And basically, they used to have emotional outburst, mood swing. This time, they are jumping around. The other time, they're just looking at you. They're not saying anything. So the next is dyscalculia. Dyscalculia is similar to people who have issues with mathematics. And in this case, it's different from math phobia. Please let me clarify. Dyscalculia is when you have a fear of mathematics. What I experienced while I was in high school, the story I told you at the beginning, for those of you who were there, when I believed I couldn't do well, and that is actually what they call lack of efficacy for mathematics, actually. So I lacked mathematics efficacy, which led to my mathematics, which was a result of my mathematics phobia, that is fear of mathematics. I believed I could not understand mathematics and I was not doing too well at this. So these are issues, all right? So it's different from dyscalculia. For people who have dyscalculia, yes, they may not like mathematics, but in their own case, they have severe issues with mathematics. Anything math concepts, anything, when you say 2 plus 2, 4, 4 plus 2, they are finding it difficult. Their brain cannot process those things on time. So they have issues measuring time. Just like I told you about that, my friend. They have issues estimating weights and some other things like that. You say something is 5 kg, they may not understand. They are unsure on how to approach basic math problem. Like, how is this thing? How do you do this thing? Just like the example I had given, 4 plus 4, 2 plus 2. They may struggle with it. The other one is that they have issues following the order of operation. If you, for example, I like to use BODMAS as that for that. If you say 2 plus 2 into brackets 6, that is 2 plus 2, 4. Then you have 6 outside. 6 times 4, 24. They are confused. They are saying, what is this 6 doing outside? What do you mean by you are multiplying it? They have issues understanding those simple operations. They find it difficult to count and group numbers together. If you, I like to give this example while I'm teaching them those who are in primary among them. If you put 5 stones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stones, and you say take away 2, and the child takes 2 away, how many do you have left? Just to count 1, 2, 3. The child may be having issues with it. That's dyscalculia. The next, very closely with that, is dysgraphia. This one is handwriting. Because of time, I don't want to spend much time on it. And the last one is dyspraxia. This is with what's it called? Motor skills. But why did I explain this? I want to close in 3 minutes so I can take questions and we don't take up much of our time. The parts of the question that my friend Jubilee asked: when you are struggling with a particular subject, what do you do? For example, for mathematics, you may not be dyscalculic. That is, you may not have issues with dyscalculia. It may be that the approach the teacher is using, you are not really getting it. There are many. I like to advocate for technology, the use of assistive technology. Now you can imagine if I was giving this presentation and wanted to do it on WhatsApp, what would we have done? 2 options. Is that we have a conference call on WhatsApp which cannot take more than 8 people, so we are limited. Or I start sending voice message which cannot be conversational. But look at what Google Meet has done. Look at what other video conferencing apps like Zoom, free conferencing app have done to be able to augment that. Microsoft Teams, So in that same vein too, you have to use technology to help yourself. And there are some basic Android apps that you can use. Just download it on your phone if you do. And if you don't have a phone, you can use it on your parents' app. So just go to Play Store if you are using an Android, or you go to Apple Store for those who are using Apple devices, and you check those apps. Very simple apps that help you to be able to work on your, because there's this thing we call executive functioning. It's actually a part of our brain that helps us to be able to understand how to function, do some simple basic organizational skills. So this app help you to develop it. So it's self-paced. It's things you can do. These are things you can do by yourself. These are things that you don't need anybody to put you through. You just develop it and then you improve on it. That's number one. Number two, for example, if you said to be reading, myself, I used to prefer, instead of sitting down to read, whether soft copy or hard copy, I prefer, because I'm an auditory learner, I prefer it being read to me. So I use some app on my phone. For example, I use Voice Aloud. So while my colleagues are writing notes in the class, sometimes I may write, but I would have to convert those written texts to audio versions, so that I can just plug my earphone, or anytime I can just be listening to it like someone listening to a song. Some people are fond of learning that way because they are auditory learners. They can remember the lyrics of songs. Same way. So in that way, you leverage it and then you use it. Emphasizing on mathematics, you have to understand that mathematics, in the case of mathematics, it works well with segmenting and consistency. That is, I'm struggling with mathematics. What am I expected to do? I have to get to write out everything. Let's assume I'm in SS1, and I am to offer some subjects, probably circle geometry, and some of those subjects, indices, logarithm. Mathematics is cumulative, is sequential. If you don't understand indices, to understand logarithm will be a challenge. If you don't understand logarithm, to understand the next level will be a challenge. So if you don't understand simple factorization, if you don't understand those basics, it will be difficult for you to understand the other ones. So you don't jump to those other ones you don't understand yet. No, you come to the ones you understand. And if you always come to the one that is sequel, the one that is before the next one. So if you need to go back to understanding multiplication table, you have to master that, because it's a basic. The next is probably you want to understand fractions. Next thing is probably you want to understand what do we call it now? This the use of variables, yes, using probably 4x plus 6x, that will give you 10x. So you have to understand those things. It's once you understand that, you can now start going to equations. Once you understand those basics, that's when you can talk about other advanced methods. And as you are doing those things, please always do word problems, because in mathematics you cannot escape word problems. So once you build yourself with basic word problems, when I say Mrs. Precious has 4 cars, she gave Mr. Steven 2 cars, how many cars does she have left? Apparently that's 2 cars. As basic as that, you are building you remember I told you the other time in the first presentation, you are building your neural pathways to be able to see things in the imagination. You cannot even see the person. You don't know that Miss Precious. You don't know that Mr. Steven. You don't know that car. You don't know any of those things, but you're able to picture it and look at it as if it is real. Before you start going to Mr. Hugo, who is a businessman, owns 50, imported 50 cars, as also percentage. What is his value added tax? And you start doing those complex ones. You have to understand the basics. And so I keep emphasizing, you may be in SS1, right? And you do not understand mathematics. Don't start doing the one they are doing. Don't continue with the indices and logarithm. You need to go back to the basics and start developing yourself. And if you are using this conventional mathematics textbook, no problem. But I always advise that you don't solve all of the examples, for God's sake. Always solve 9 exercises. Don't solve all of the exercises. Always solve minimum 9 exercises. That is the first 3, the 3 in the middle, and the last 3. The first 3 in all of those textbooks are always the simple ones, because they are structured from simple to complex. So the first 3, you answer them, then you get excited. Yes, I understand this concept. You don't do the other ones again. Go to the middle. Answer the next 3. Then you go to the last. answer the last three again. Those ones may be more challenging. And I keep emphasizing these two things I would like to emphasize to you. See, mathematics is very emotional. Mathematics needs your attention. If you don't give mathematics your attention, it will go or she will move. So that implies that you cannot leave mathematics. No matter what the challenge is, you must keep solving. You must keep solving. And please have a book dedicated to your maths. Please, I don't advocate for all of this crossing mathematics notes into four, like dividing it with ruler. No, solve on a plain sheet. Do correction, mark it, reward yourself as you are doing it. Then the second part is please have an accountable partner. Get someone who understands it better and then let the person work with you. Let the person be there for you. I like to give you my example as a round up on that. I told you my story of how I struggled with mathematics while I was in high school. I was competing with my colleagues who were good at mathematics, and I felt I needed to beat them in other areas, so I was not paying attention to mathematics. So while I graduated, I failed mathematics, unfortunately. I wrote another one. I had a D7, and that was sufficient enough for me during my time to gain admission to the tertiary institution. It's not again. If you have a D7 in mathematics, I'm afraid you may not gain admission. You can't even access the tertiary institution at the moment. So because a credit in maths and English is sacrosanct. So that implies that when I felt, I had a D7 and I moved on, but I knew in my mind, now I'm doing mathematics even in the university, I must still write another WAEC or another GCE and make sure I have a C6 minimum in mathematics so as to improve, to believe in myself and then to use it for further studies. And so when I graduated, I had to take another course. Like I had to obtain a GCE, and then I went to my friend who was the best graduating student in mathematics in the departments, in our own department. She's from mathematics department, and I was with her for months as she schooled me. Now the emphasis is this: she mentored me every day, and I was working. When I left, I was working as a research assistant. Then, after I graduated from my first degree, I would go from work. I would go to her house in the evening every day. We take 4 hours, we take 3 hours, and I kept studying. I was working on past questions. I would like to say that towards the end, for those of you who are preparing for examinations, past question is basically one of the best ways to learn. You just study past question, you study the trend, and then you work it over and again. When you see question, I told you about the reticular activating system of our brain. It responds to question. Remember, I told you must get the number of red cards you see before the end of this bootcamp. So your brain is ready. Even when you've forgotten the answer, even when it's not even an assignment again, later in life, when you see a red card, you may want to remember, this was what Mr. Stephen was saying then about red cards. Yes, I remember. Why? Because your brain is positioned in the same vein too. When you are used to questions, your brain is designed towards answering questions. So whenever you see any questions related to that subsequently, you are active. And then the brain is saying, yes, let's solve this. And then you are good to go. So, to round off, Jubilee, please, you may just try some of those methods and try to understand yourself. There's no one way to these things. I've only spoken about a part, and I have to stop on that now. But there are other parts to it too, in terms of understanding some concepts in mathematics. There's this other part I used to advocate to students in the place of studying similar subjects, similar topics rather. Mathematics is grouped into about 4 different categories. There are some categories that are shapes in number, in their approach, such as circle geometry, and other things, trigonometry and the likes. And there are some that are word in their nature, like angle of elevation and depression. When you have to say, okay, a man is standing at a height that sustains this, you have to picture it, imagine it, and then get it done in that area. There are some that are fractional, and there are some also that are not even fractional, but they are used to variables. So you have to understand how to do those ones. Imagine. So you have to remember, I told you about neural pathways. You don't just say, today you did circle geometry, and then tomorrow you are doing factorization or what's it called? Simultaneous equation. No. You ensure you finish circle geometry. You understand it to the major parts. Then you move to trig. Your brain is still working on shape. So you can go to trigonometry. and then you understand it, gain mastery on it. And I emphasize to you, for those of you who are preparing exams, you don't need to understand all of the topics in mathematics before you write WAEC. That's just by the way. If you understand that WAEC in mathematics is distributed into 3 sections. The first section is for the theory, for the objective 1 to 60, and the next is actually 2 sections. First 5 questions that are compulsory, and then you have another 7, which includes graph. Graph is not compulsory; it may come once in a while or not. So, but for those 5 subjects, 5 topics that are compulsory, those first 5, you check. I emphasize to students that minimum 12 years back, you backdate it, and then you check minimum 12 years. You pick those topics. By the time you extract it, you discover that you have extracted about, is that 13 or 14? I can't recall now. Topics. Those ones you must understand them because they are compulsory topics. The other ones where you have to pick electives, then you can pick the one that you have preferred that works best for you. But you can imagine yourself if you had about 40, in that first part alone, then that's what. At that point, if you have any question, please feel free to ask the question. Thank you very much.
Wow. Question. Yes, it was wonderful. Thank you.
It says, how the one recruit. Please mute your mic so I can read it. Okay, thank you. Stephanie is asking how you an enthusiasm to study for examinations generally. Oh, thank you, my dear. That's a very brilliant question. Let's assume you've lost the interest, you've lost the passion to be to. The first is you talk to yourself. I'd always personally, I like motivation. I like reward system. So you say to yourself, Stephanie, yeah, I need this exam because without this exam, I will not get to the next level. Do I want to be at the next level? Yes. And there is no next level without examination. There is no next level without a test. So that implies that this test is important. I may not like it, but I need to do it. So what do I do next? You write it and you paste it in a conspicuous place. Now you don't just you write the right word and you paste it in a place. Let me give you an example. I'm preparing for an examination, and it's my terminal examination, and I wrote it there, and I say what I wrote there is, Stephen, you would write this examination and make all A's. So that's another part again where you have to write the grades you want to make in subjects. But for me, I said all A's. So that implies that every morning you put it in a conspicuous place in your house or probably in your room. When you see it, you read it and you read it out. Stephanie, you will do well in your academics. You will prepare for this exam. You will be disciplined. You will not play when you're supposed to study. You will not take too much time doing other extracurricular activity. You don't just say, I will not. You will put it there, like you write it in the first person singular now, and that is actually I. But by the time you are reading it, you read it, and then at the long run again, you affirm it to yourself. So when you feel like you don't want to do it again, you keep reminding yourself. Remember, I started by saying the reward. Okay, I'm preparing for this exam because that's the requirement for the next level. Okay, yeah, I want to get to the higher institution. Do I really want that in the exam? It's not about the exam, it's about the institution. I like to paint this biblical injunction for those of us who are Christian. The Bible says, but for the glory that was ahead of him, he endured it. He was not looking at the shame, he was not looking at everything, he was just enduring the cross. And I would like to balance it by giving you a practical example for non-Christians. There was a time a story was said of a man who had abused the king. And then the king wanted to punish him. The king said, I will make sure I kill you, but I will not kill you with my hands. I will make sure you kill yourself. I'll put your hands in your life in your hands. So what the king did was to put a just the king placed a fan with a small handle, a very fragile handle, and then placed an egg on the surface of the fan. And then he told the man, you have to walk down the marketplace and come back. And if you can walk from my palace to the marketplace and come back with this egg unbroken, then you will live. But I must tell you that a man will be behind you who will be holding a machete. That is, once the egg drops, he will kill you at the point. And the man said, no problem, I'll give it a try. So he was walking, and as he was going to the left, there were some people who were praising him, who were saying, yes, you can do it. I was only looking at the egg because I knew my life depended on it. And so, my dear Stephanie, that's the same way it goes. You focus on that goal because you know your life depends on it. You know your next level depends on it. You don't focus on the examination. You keep pressing that this is the next thing I want to do. I'm going to put in my best, and whatever it requires, I'm going to give it the best shot. Thank you. I don't know if I've answered your question. Please let me know if I have not.
Okay. Any other question? Any other question? Any other question, please? Wow. Feedback, contribution, question?
Good afternoon. I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
If you have a goal that seems impossible, you go to another goal, or you can still do the same goal once. That's impossible.
I'm afraid, Jubilee, I did not get the question explicitly. Can you please explain better? I'm sorry.
If we have a goal we're achieving for, but it is impossible and we keep trying to get it, should we go to another goal, or keep trying and asking others to help us with the goal?
Okay, thank you so much for that brilliant question. Yeah, the question is a personal question, right? But I will answer generally at the both extremes, to the positive and also to the other end. Now, if you had a goal, let's assume you had a goal and you're trying to achieve and you're unable to achieve it. Should you call for others to be able to help you, or should you just leave the goal and then go for another goal? The first is, why do you set a goal? The reason why you set the goal must never be lost. So please always know the example I gave you the other time. What's the next level? So if I said I wanted to have all A's in my exam because I know the University of Ibadan, they consider higher grades compared to just the post-UTME mark. So for that reason, it's UI I chose for my first choice. So I must ensure that all my grades are distinction. That is the point. So that's my goal. Now, that's a very brilliant goal. But I have to ask myself 5 major things to consider. Is it smart enough? That is it specific? Yes, it's specific. I want to go to UI and this is what I want. That's nice. Now the next is M. Is it measurable? Yes, it's measurable. Now, is it achievable? Let me look at my previous grades. While I was in high school, have I ever had all A's? So why am I saying I will have it in WAEC? Let me be realistic, which will take you to the next one. Realistic. Am I sure I can do this? Not talking down on yourself, but telling yourself the reality. So that's the point. But should in case all of these factors are in place, yes, the goal is smart enough, and then you are not getting it yet, and that's why you need others. You need helping hands. That's when you call on others to be able to say, "Hey, please come help me." Yes, I want to have an A in mathematics, but all my life I'd always had B. So I needed to get an A this time. So please, you are good at mathematics. Come help me. So together we can achieve this goal. You understand? That's when you beckon on others. That's for in the case when your goal is real. And there's a part which is the last part, which is time bound. There are some goals once once it's set and then you miss it, you may not be able to get it done immediately. Back to that same example, you want to get admission into UI and eventually you do not have all A's in mathematics, in your WAEC or in your NECO or what have you. So that way you may change the goal. You may say, okay, not UI again. Now let me choose another school that does not consider that. Probably let me try to choose Unilag. So Unilag will consider the post-UTME results score very importantly. Okay, so let me consider Unilag. Do you understand that? So that's the way it works also. Please let me know if you are not clear. I can explain further with examples.
Jubilee, your question, has it been answered?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, I would like to say a very big thank you to Mr. Stephen for your time, for your in-depth and for digging deep and exploring all the angles of this topic. I want to appreciate you for your time and your efforts. I know that it has taken a whole lot from you, and may the good Lord bless you greatly in Jesus' name.